I think it's going to be a fairly big moment. I mean, it will be the Hunt moment might replace the Portillo moment in national politics, because he will be the most senior person pretty much ever to have lost their seat.
The Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has admitted his Surrey seat could be won or lost by 1,500 votes as he faces a battle for his political survival. The Godalming and Ash parliamentary seat is a key target for the Liberal Democrats, who are hoping to demolish large swathes of the Tory southern stronghold. At the last election, Jeremy Hunt secured a comfortable 50% of the vote. But this time, could it be different?
Paul follows.
Liberal Democrats?
Absolute.
And is there a particular reason for that, or is it just for ousting?
One, he's been a very good local councillor and leader, but basically to get rid of the Conservatives. Mm-hmm. It doesn't help voting Labour here, so voting for the Lib Dems here is the best thing to do.
No, I'm definitely going to be voting for Jeremy Hunt.
Populism. Let's bring in Marine Le Pen here. Let's have extreme right-wing parties.
Jeremy Hunt is a very, on-hand politician. He does an awful lot of things, but I'm not going to say I'm going to vote for him.
But if he's been hands-on, you don't want to support him?
Well, perhaps it's because I've never supported the Conservatives. As a person, he's a very good MP.
Jeremy Hunt is very popular locally. Boots was going to close their pharmacy in Farncombe, which is just outside of Godalming. And Jeremy Hunt made a big deal of kind of posting a photo on the socials and saying that he was calling up the CEO of Boots to make sure that this pharmacy stays open. And it did stay open. And I think that's very much his strategy, is to be kind of very visible locally and invested. And I do think he is, because of that, he's kind of garnered a certain amount of respect, and he is liked as a person. But there seems to be a divide between like Jeremy Hunt, the person, who is liked, and then the Tory party, which isn't.
Show me.
Ed, we've been in Godalming this morning. That's the seat that you are testing or trying against Jeremy Hunt. How likely is it that you'll win it?
Well, the results from the doorstep are looking very promising. I think everyone knows that if they want to get rid of the Conservative, in this case Jeremy Hunt, they need to vote Liberal Democrat. That's the case across all of Surrey, actually. We're here in Woking, and it's looking good for us here. And it tells a story of this election. I think lots of long-time Conservative voters, people who always voted Conservative, families voted Conservative, are saying they're not going to do it this time. Part of them, I think, are fed up with the Conservatives' dishonesty, the lack of integrity. We've seen some corruption. They really in despair with Liz Truss's budget, which ruined their pensions, put up mortgages, and they feel that Rishi Sunak is completely out of touch. So I think they've just said, not have any more of this. And so they're considering, for the first time ever, not voting Conservative, and they're switching to us, partly because we're the only ones who can beat them in places like Godalming, but also I think we've got great candidates like Paul Follows, and he'll be a great local champion for the area.
I don't think it is honourable to the electorate to put policies out that you fundamentally know are undeliverable. And actually, one of the reasons why I've actually been really happy with our manifesto is that everything in it is something I can get behind, and I know how to pay for it and how it would work. And that's, I think, quite refreshing in British politics, because a lot of this is going to be pie in the sky, particularly from parties that know they're not going to be in government. The issues that come up on the doorstep are predominantly things like water and sewage. Jeremy stood up at a public meeting here a month or so ago and said that privatisation was working. People can clearly see that it isn't. We've got E. coli in the water. We've got sewage, water companies basically out of control, going bankrupt almost. The other thing that comes up is the NHS. Jeremy was the health secretary. He caused an immense amount of damage to this area and to the country at large in terms of the NHS. Speak to any doctor or nurse in this constituency and they will very clearly tell you how they feel. The other thing that people have noticed is that Jeremy has a habit of saying one thing to the public and then not doing anything when he gets to the House of Commons, whether it be on sewage or drilling in the Surrey Hills, even back to Brexit. I mean, he was an avid Remainer turned ardent Brexiteer. There are a number of things where he has said he will do something or support something and then done the exact opposite.
Do you know that the Lib Dems might take the seat?
Yes, absolutely, yes. And actually they're the only party that have knocked on our door so far, so I had quite a chat with them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And, I mean, how were you, their policy, were you pleased with it?
Yeah, to be honest, I think they swayed me. I was very much Lib Dem or Green, And I was very 50-50 about which, so I guess always meeting the person is going to help convince you, right?
I agree with a lot of their policies.
Is there one in particular that stands out to you?
I think fairer taxes. I think a lot of people wouldn't mind paying more tax to get better services. So at the moment, Labour unfortunately are following closely behind the Conservatives in terms of not raising taxes, whereas I think the majority of people are just tired of things not working. The NHS, councils being cut to the bone. So I think the Lib Dems, in that sense, fairer taxation.
On the doorstep, most people are in favour of tax rises if they're definitely going back into public services. So they need reassurances that the money is not going to be wasted and it's actually going to be spent on the things that we're saying. We are the only party that is talking about things like social care and how we pay for the NHS and how we deal with mental health. We're the only party who's come up with ways to fund that. And at the moment, we are the only party actually admitting that's even a problem. I mean, it's a problem everybody knows is a problem, but nobody's tackling it at all.
The Conservatives have shoved up personal taxes to record levels, and I think it's hurt people because it's been quite unfair. People on low incomes have been brought back into the tax net, and they're suffering. And when a cost of living crisis is on and people are having to pay high bills, it was just the wrong thing to do. So what we've done is try to look to those areas where high tax would be more appropriate. So the big banks, for example, we want to reverse the tax cuts the Conservatives have given to the big banks. We think that could raise £4.3 billion. We think the social media giants and the likes of Amazon and Google, they pay something called the digital services tax at the moment. We want to triple that. That would raise quite a bit of money. And our proposals on capital gains tax. We want a reform of that. And actually, not many people pay capital gains tax. It's 0.9% of the population, so a tiny minority. But within that, we think some people could actually benefit from our capital gains reforms because they're targeted at the 0.1%, the multi-millionaires, the billionaires who they pay less in capital gains tax than the rest of us do in income. That's just unfair. And we think they should pay their fair share, and then we get this really important investment in our public services.
The first thing I want to push for is on water is immediate action by the regulator to actually bring Thames Water to book. I think actually Thames Water's running out of time in terms of its own company. I mean, they look like they're on the verge of bankruptcy. There's a lot of chat about whether these sorts of companies should be brought back into private ownership, public ownership, and how that works. And the Lib Dem manifesto talks about that, and I wouldn't be surprised if others did today and this week as well. But the Conservatives seem to think that the privatisation still works, so they seem to be just stay the course. What we would do is bring in better regulation and potentially part nationalise or nationalise some of these companies. But companies like Thames Water, they could well collapse before that happens. So I imagine that I will be one of many pushing for more drastic and immediate government intervention as an emergency precaution.
Take the River Mole, for example, which runs through a number of constituencies in Surrey. It's had some of the worst sewage pollution in the country. And some of the rivers we have, a river in my constituency, the Hogs Mill, they're really valuable ecosystems. They're chalk streams, really, really precious. Some people have talked about these chalk streams as the equivalent of the Amazon from the UK. They're so important environmentally, and yet the Conservatives have allowed the water companies, and the weak regulators allow the water companies to pump their filthy sewage, and it seems to be getting worse. So we sort of talked about it quite a lot a while ago, and then we realised that lots of other people shared our concerns. The more we talked about it, the more people said, yeah, we want you to do something about it. So we've talked to the experts, we thought long and hard about it. These powerful water companies have to be held to account. They can't be putting profit above the environment and public health. We have to change that around. We have to have environmental experts from local communities on the water boards. We have to change them into public benefit corporations. If they won't invest, we need a sewage tax on their profits. We need a new regulator. That's our announcement today. We call it the Clean Water Authority, to replace Ofwat and take powers not just from Ofwat but from the Environment Agency, the Drinking Water Inspectorate. So we've got a really tough regulator who's going to hold these water companies to account. They have made billions. They've borrowed billions to pay their CEOs huge bonuses, to give their shareholders dividends when they didn't invest. That is just wrong. and the water companies and the government shouldn't have allowed them to do that. It was a massive Conservative failure, and we're going to campaign and turn that around.
They can't now do these things because there's a health risk of doing so. They've actually had to cancel it in Elstead this year. It's one of the more rural villages in the west of the constituency. They've had to cancel that because they can't guarantee public health.
Sorry, they cancelled the duck race?
Yes.
Because
of E. coli in the water. Yes.
That's extraordinary.
It's absolutely. And this is where fundamentals like water, when these sorts of things get upended, you start to see the sorts of issues that you get here. I think ultimately we will ban this. The way that those fines work at the moment don't offer any incentive for Thames Water to do anything other than what they do now, which is to continue to put sewage into the waters. It should be illegal.
Can I ask you if you've been pleased with the Conservative government over the past few years?
I can't work out why they think it's right to lie to us all the time. So, and to me, that's the biggest issue. I think the country needs a strong Conservative party, but they need time on the sidelines. They're very tired, I think, and they need to get back to the basics of running the country rather than running the country for themselves.
Can I ask you who you'll be voting for?
Conservative.
And can you tell me why that is? Is it Jeremy Hunt? Is that what you're...
No, Rishi Sunak, I believe in him.
What particular policies have drawn you towards the
I
Conservatives?
think his honesty and everything that he's trying to do, and I just don't think that Keir Starmer and any of the other parties have got anything sustainable.
We need to get rid of weak Liberal politicians, bring in populism in order to shake things up. Not that I want them in power, but we need to have them because most people in this country aren't allowed to have a view on anything now, particularly for Indigenous. It's now illegal.
So, not a vote for Jeremy Hunt then?
Well, Conservatives are very weak.
Are you pleased with how it's gone the next 10 years?
The last 10 years, not particularly, no, but it's been better lately, I think, I think they're moving in the right direction, for sure, but, I'm a staunch Conservative, so I'm in that camp.
I think they've been terrible in terms of the way they've run this country. Prosperity has not worked. Brexit has not worked. I blame them for that. It's been bad for the country. And I think Rishi Sunak and his cabinet, they don't understand how real people are struggling and what life is like for them. So more empathy from politicians, which I don't see with the Conservatives.
I'd bring back things like the death penalty and I'd happily hang people myself, but then I have a past.
You've got potential to take this seat.
So the polls tell me, and so quite a lot of door knocking is giving me the feeling of, but Chancellor's been saying that he's the underdog, but at the end of the day, he's the Conservative Chancellor of the Exchequer and has been a minister 4 times in the last 14 years. If he thinks he's the underdog, either something has gone very wrong for the Conservatives or very right for us.